and make sure it's working.
Sure, if there's a link in Discord.
Yeah, but it's also just Panther_dev.
Oh, I meant to ask this before, other weeks. If you're trying to get people to be quiet, what do you do? Being like, yo.
If you notice, yes. If you notice that I'm having a rough time, yes. But also just like kind of patrol the people around you would probably be most helpful. Yeah. Like,
Sometimes it's bad.
yeah.
Like you'll say something about it, and then they'll like.
No, and then I can just go back to do the condescending, like, this is talking boundaries, guys. So, all else fails.
Yeah. And then they'll probably do it afterwards.
Yeah, Aaron.
And then I'm like, talking boundaries. And it's like kindergarten.
I don't know. What are the checklists?
Yeah.
One of them.
Yeah. All right. Has everybody had ample time to fill out attendance? Everybody filled it out?
Eat pizza during shift.
Is the Twitch stream working? We can't seem to find the big TVs.
Damn.
So I'm not 100% sure.
I'm loading it right now.
Sweet. Just tell me if we're streaming.
I should.
Why?
I watch the stream. During
Yes, you are okay.
I don't. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You made the 3D model. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Stream working.
Yes.
All right. Everybody seat. For the most part, people are sitting, so that was kind of weird. But
No, you.
Okay.
Okay.
Pascal.
Appreciate it. Oh my god.
Pascal.
Sorry.
All right, guys. Woo! Woo! Awesome meeting today. As you guys know, we have a workshop. It's going to be on project planning. It's given by the lovely Sean, the man, the myth, the legend. If you haven't filled out attendance yet, I'm going to skip forward. Attendance channel, go to that. The link is there. Please fill that out. It's so that GSU sees that we're like a legit club. Thanks. I do have some slight announcements. Put this for Twitch so the camera actually looks at me. I hope that Twitch people can see. Okay, so some light announcements. First of all, I know a couple weeks back I talked about the Anonymous Concerns link. That is still in our links channel. I encourage you guys, if you have issues that you don't really feel comfortable bringing to your team lead, bringing to the member that it might be like an issue with, bringing to officers, and you just want to kind of like let it out, let somebody know without having your name attached to it, please fill out that link. Utilize that link. I encourage you guys to try to problem solve with the person that you're trying to problem solve with first, but if it really is something that you don't really want to bring up, yeah, you can use that. We've gotten one submission to that thus far, and it was basically somebody saying that they don't really feel like they're talented enough to be here, and that they feel like they are like dead weight, which, I mean, officers, have you felt that way when you first got into the club?
Like, I didn't know any C#. I didn't even know Unity was.
Yeah.
Within the club, so.
I mean, Pascal too. Everybody, when they first get here, feels that way, and because the people who know a lot about what they're talking about are the ones talking, it's really easy to feel that way. So I want to let y'all know that you're not alone. Being here is like a really good step towards getting better. I think that there's no better way at getting good at game development than developing a game. So on that note, I have a great quote from Jake the dog.
Sucking at something? First step towards being sort of good at something.
Right? Well said. So yeah, for real. Remember that quote whenever you're like, man, I feel like I'm not talented enough to be here. Because game dev is also like you make very small steps as you go. So it might not be this like massive change where you're like, whoa, I'm really good at this all of a sudden. But if you keep looking like a year back, even a couple months back, you'll look back and be like, wow, why did it take me a week to do that? I can do that in like 2 hours now. And it's a really cool feeling doing that. So just keep going, keep stepping out of your comfort zone. Y'all are doing great, obviously. Milestone 1 was flippin' fantastic. So keep girl bossing. Also, remember that anonymous concerns form exists, so utilize it if you feel the need to. Last announcement is that next week is a work meeting. Bring anything that you might need to do your work. There's a list of some possible things that you might need to get your work done. Feel free to bring anything on that. Well, I was doing that as a joke, but actually, please don't bring in like gaming chairs. I don't want anybody to take that seriously, and then we have like a bunch of gaming chairs rolling in. But yeah, bring laptops, all that good stuff to get your work done. And it is not a game night, so please, we're not going to let you guys hook up to the screens around. Mainly just if you're doing something that could be like distracting to the people who are trying to get work done, don't do it. Bring homework if you want to bring homework. I think that we're settled on like playing Chilled Cow, like the lo-fi girl doing her work. I don't know what I'm talking about. That girl? Yeah, Lo-Fi Girl. I think we're gonna have that playing around for those of y'all who like to have like a little bit of background noise. You guys are obviously free to talk, but do not bring games. Thank you. So any questions about anything that I said?
I wish I had the credit.
Okay. Cool. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Sean do his thing. And y'all be respectful like you always are. Woo!
Don't listen to her. Y'all can roast me. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Sean. I am one of the lead developers for a local game studio called Corrupted Media. We are currently developing a virtual reality esport called Vertical Shift, where you basically get to kind of think of yourself as Spider-Man and Iron Man wrapped up into one, and then you go and play competitive sports. Namely, our main game mode right now is Freeze Tag, where you're in two teams, and you're trying to tag the other team. And then if one of your teammates gets tagged, you untag them. And so you're kind of think of it like you're back in elementary school, running around the playground, except now you can fly. And so I've been working on Vertical Shift for almost 2 or 3 years now, and we've largely been doing a lot of that development in our free time, outside of day jobs, outside of school, outside of personal lives, and everything like that. And as you guys are probably no strangers to at this point, that making video games can be really, really hard. First of all, what's up? I know you. And so I'm sure most of the time you guys come to these meetings to talk a lot about code, talk a lot about game design, and talk a lot about various more exciting things like that. But today I'm going to talk about kind of the thing that's really at the root and heart of all of that, which is just managing your time in the first place and how to make sure that you are utilizing your time well and not getting overwhelmed by a large workload. So, yeah. Who here has more work to do than time to do it? Show of hands. A lot of you people. Honestly, the guys who didn't put up their hands, I'm a little bit worried about. I think they should try taking on a couple more challenges. You got to push yourself, guys. Yeah, so I'm on the same boat. Kind of like I was already talking about. At Corrupted Media, we joke about what we call our work-life balance, which is basically that we have to balance all of our day workload with our night workload with the rest of our life, making sure that we're still getting the right level of fitness, we're going to the doctor, we're eating, which can sometimes be a really hard thing. I'm sure some of you guys have struggled with when you get busy. And on top of all that, still having relationships, having fun, going to parties, playing video games, which is very important if you want to make video games. And so it's not always easy to get all of your work done when you don't feel like you have enough hours in the day. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is how we can maximize our productivity in order to make sure that we are utilizing the time that we have and leaving time left over, so that we can still do other things and get our game built and, win-win, right? And so that's what project planning is, really, at the end of the day, is maximizing your productivity and making sure that you have the correct plan for your project so that you can be incredibly productive while you're actually working on it. So the very first question that really needs to be answered is, what is productivity? So before I go forth, what do you guys think productivity is? You?
Like the amount of like, you know, we're not like, I think it's all like the progress, all the progress you get for all of your effort.
Yeah, the progress from your effort. That's pretty good. Anyone else?
The ability, okay, sorry. Being able to bring about a change in society.
So productivity is bringing out a change in society. That's definitely high ambitions, but also correct. What's up?
Efficiency of production.
Efficiency of production. Yeah, so that's kind of going off what he said. Kind of the progress that comes from your output, how efficient you're being, and that's definitely a really, really good way to look at it. So let's take a quick look at what Google says, because Google knows all, right? Google's always right. So Google says that productivity is the effectiveness of productive effort, especially in industry, as measured in terms of the rate of output per unit of input. So that's a really wordy and almost nonsensical definition, but it does kind of, I think, tackle a lot of what you guys were saying. But really, the reason I like this definition is because it coincidentally uses two key words that I really like, which is output and input. Because the way that I define productivity is that it is quite literally your output divided by your input, or also known as your impact divided by your effort. Now, there's a very important reason why I like to define it this way, especially in kind of like a mathematical sense, is because the math actually applies the same way here. And so who can tell me what happens if you have a fraction and you start to raise the denominator? What happens to the whole value? The value becomes what?
Small.
The value becomes smaller. Yes, exactly. And so this is what the first problem that I really wanted to tackle here, because I think that when most people think about productivity and how to increase their productivity, the first thing that they tell themselves is, oh, I just need to work harder. But when you kind of look at this definition right here and think about what happens when you start raising your effort and your overall productivity stays the same, you're not actually getting more impact, then you're actually being less productive because you're working really hard, you're not accomplishing anything more, and so you're really just spinning wheels and gaining no traction. Now, the inverse of that is what happens if you try to increase your impact while keeping your effort the same. Then what happens to the overall productivity? It gets higher. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is not about how can we work harder to increase our productivity, but how can we increase our impact while keeping our effort the same. Yes.
I just want to say, like, one of my teachers back in high school told me this: do smart work, not hard work.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's, at the end of the day, that's going to be a very good way to paraphrase this. But I'm going to kind of go even a step beyond that, because the thing that's ironic about this presentation is by the time we're done with this workshop, we're not even going to have accomplished any work at all. But we're going to be positioned in a place where when we do start working, we know that we're doing the smart work and that we've gotten the hard work out of the way. So to summarize everything I just said, productivity is about doing less, not more. And so to build on top of that, project planning as a practice is not about how can we get more work done, not how can we maximize our throughput, but it's about how can we make sure we're getting the right work done. How can we eliminate the work that is just kind of grinding our gears and not moving the needle, and how can we make sure that we're focusing on the work that's going to be the most impactful. So a lot of this, to kind of preface, comes out of a book called Mind Management, Not Time Management. And in that book, they break down kind of like the 4 stages of creativity. That's a whole nother talk that I don't really have the time to get into, but I did want to call it out. First, to say it's a great read. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. But second, what I wanted to kind of point out here is that, kind of like what I was just saying to you, the 4 stages of creativity include illumination, which is the actual moment that like the idea pops into your head, right? That's like your creative moment, like your shower thought. And then incubation is kind of like the moments that lead up to that shower thought. That's all of the stimuli that you've received. That's all of the different bad ideas that you've had that are coming together. And that's literally you not thinking about the problem and letting the problem come to you. And then there's these two other stages, which is the preparation where you're gathering all your information. And then there's verification where you're refining your idea and you're making sure that everything you're doing so far is legit. And so kind of like I was just telling you, before we even get to incubation or illumination, we're not actually going to get any work done today. We're going to focus on the preparation and verification of our work and making sure that we are properly prepared and we have verified what we know. And so the key way to do that is what I use for my job, which is the IDS tool. IDS stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. So this tool is a very, very useful tool. It's one that you can use either in a meeting setting if you're collaborating with a team. It can also be done in an individual setting if you're just trying to figure out your own personal workload or plan a personal project. And so what we're going to do for this workshop today is basically go through a kind of mock process of the IDS tool so that you guys have the ability to use this within your day-to-day work. So I think, yes, so it is time to make sure that you have pen and paper. If you, I believe, yeah, there's plenty of pen and paper right here. If you guys would like to grab some, I strongly, strongly recommend you grab some. You are welcome to use laptops if you are super tied to your laptop. But I do want to make the comment of saying that your laptop cannot distract you with Twitter or Instagram. What's up? You can use a pencil, but, you know, you can't erase your mistakes in life, and so the pencil's misleading.
It was.
Yeah, I heard you were hold up. Glad to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
We'll talk after.
I'm hoping to see some of what y'all are working on after all this. So while we're getting pen and paper out, does anyone have any questions so far?
I might have a silly goose question, but this is just a method, right? Like it's not an actual like software.
This is just a method. This is not an actual software. I'm sure there is software that can do this, but it's highly unnecessary. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where you can go as complex or as simple as you want with it. Me personally, when it comes to these kinds of like administrative tools, I want them to be as simple as possible because I'm sure I'm probably like a lot of you guys here where you want to get this step out of the way as fast as possible so you can go and actually making the project. But what's important is that you can't skip the step. And so that's where I want to make sure that there's no friction with these kinds of tools because then people just won't use them. Okay, so it looks like everyone who at least wants to be ready is ready. So we're going to move on. So go ahead just to kind of format your paper. I kind of gave an example here. Don't worry about the actual content, but like really it's like, so I just want to have one really big column where you can write out a to-do list. And then on the right side, I kind of want to make sure that there's just like some buffer room for these 3 columns. Don't worry about what the 3 columns are yet. There's going to be time for that later. Yeah, so I'll give you all a second to do that. And then looks like when y'all are ready, we can move on.
Like stuff to do there?
Yeah, so don't fill out the actual to-do that I put. Just the header. Like, so just do this top part right here. But really, I'm just trying to show the spacing. I want 1 column, and then I want three little columns.
Should we label them as such, or?
I just want the columns right now. Really, just make sure that you have that spacing for like kind of those 3 numbers on the side. What's that?
Can they be really general tasks, or do they have to be more specific?
So we're not writing out the to-do list yet. We're just focusing on the columns. But that's okay because that is the next step. So Uh, yes. So the first step of IDS, it's identify, discuss, and solve. So the first step is to identify, which is identify everything that you need to do. Everything that you want to work on, everything that needs to be accomplished, all of your problems, all of your goals, really just identifying anything. Now, how specific or broad you want to be with this list is really up to you and what it is you're trying to work on. So, to give some examples for me personally, because I use this for everything. So if I'm using this with my team, then maybe one day we're going to be having like a quick stand up where we're doing a sprint review. And so we get a bunch of bug tickets that come in, and we're going to do this process to our list of bug tickets. And then at the end of that process, we know exactly what bug tickets everyone's working on, and we can move on. And so that's a very specific scenario because it's a very set list of bugs that have been reported by our community. But then at the same day, sometimes I'll wake up on a Saturday and be like, okay, well, let's see, I need to go grocery shopping. I need to feed my cat. I need to make sure that, my, what do I do on a Saturday? I got to make sure that I'm back in time to hang out with friends or something. Here's like also like some of the vertical ship things that I want to get done today, as well as maybe I need to go do this favor for a friend, and you have all that stuff and you want to kind of get it into one place. And so that's a much more broad version where it's not so much about being filtered by any one project, but it's being focused on what you actually need to get done that day, versus kind of the opposite where it's like I'm focusing on one project and I'm not focusing on what's going to get done today, but I'm kind of focusing more broader on like what's going to get done this week or this sprint or something like that. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, if you haven't started already, please go ahead and just take this moment to just completely brain dump whatever chore list you have in mind onto a piece of paper right now. And this is going to be basically the task list that we're going to do the rest of the process. What's up?
Is this going into like the huge left column?
Yes, this is going to the huge left column. Thank you. That's a great question. I'm not going to put any serious time on the clock, but I'll say try to at least write about 10 or so things. And you can go beyond that. You can go under that if you really want to. But so just kind of start writing. What I recommend, so at work, we do what's called automatism, which is really just kind of like a time-boxed writing session. But the catch is that you're not allowed to stop writing. So even if your brain has kind of finished its thought, you need to keep your hand going. And it's a pretty fun exercise because you end up writing things that you never even thought you would write. But then the important thing is you want to go back later and sift through that stuff because you're going to end up writing a lot of garbage. But so that's how I normally like to do this is I'll sit down, I put 60 seconds on the clock, and then I do that little automatism exercise. Because this is really one of those things, the more you think about it, the harder it's going to be. So just write out a to-do list. I'm going to put about 60 seconds left. How are we feeling about our list? Thumbs up? And are there any thumbs down? Cool. Okay, cool. So I think we're ready to move on. I'm sure as you guys are looking over your list, you probably often feel how I feel after looking over that list, which is there's no wonder I'm so busy. Do you guys feeling that way right now, or does your to-do list feel reasonable? Or do you feel like you have a lot of work to do? Yes, or shakes or nods? I see maybe. Okay, okay. Well, so maybe you guys are better at this than I am. I don't even need to be here. But let me tell you, the curse with any to-do list is, you think that you've got a lot of that work done just by getting everything you need to do on paper. But then the big issue that comes is now you have this monolithic wall of things that you need to do. And, just the idea of doing one of those things looks incredibly daunting or difficult. And so next we're going to talk about is how can we make that to-do list seem a lot more actionable and manageable. But first and foremost, kind of going back to talking about, we're not trying to get all of our work done. We're just trying to get our most impactful work done. And so the first and foremost thing you always want to do with every to-do list is recognize that not everything's going to get done, and that's okay. So in the world of in the world of productivity, there is a pretty common or popular rule called the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. Has anyone heard of this before? Yes. Okay, so I see you nodding. Do you want to tell us what it is?
It's basically the idea that a small amount of really impactful actions have the biggest effect.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to take a stab? No. Okay. Well, then you'll make me have to explain it then. So kind of like he was saying, the best way to summarize it is that with any kind of given workload or really anything, there's going to be about 20% of it that's driving 80% of the results. And so if we want to flip this into a more tangible example, we can look at kind of like a restaurant, right? And so a restaurant, let's say they have 10 different things you can order on the menu. Most of the time, 20% of the items on that menu, so in this case, 2 items on that menu, are sold 80% of the time, meaning they're the highest grossing products on the menu. Most people who come in order those items. And really, truth be told, if the restaurant was starting to hurt and they needed a way to cut back, the first thing that they would want to do is drop that 80% of their product line that is only really selling to 20% of their audience. Because that way they're going to be able to really cut back on all their expenses and save a lot on their profits. In more of a workplace setting, you can kind of think of that like, so let's pretend we're making a video game. With a video game, there's things that you can work on that are really like background features, like they're kind of would-be nices. Maybe they're like stages really late in the game that most people don't really get to, or like some hidden area that's like kind of hard to find. That's, especially as developers, that's where we often get most excited, is like those little secrets, those little nuggets and hidden things. But the truth is that if only 20% of your audience is going to find that thing, should you be spending 80% of your production time working on that thing? Or should you be spending 80% of your production time on the 20% that everyone's going to be playing a bunch, and kind of letting the remaining 80% just be okay? So there's the 80-20 rule is kind of one of those things that it's the hardest part about it is learning how to let go and accept the fact that not everything's going to be perfect. But at the end of the day, the way I always like to think about it is, first of all, if you try to complete everything on your to-do list, you're just going to burn yourself out. I'm sure there's people in this room who have experienced burnout from probably trying to do that exact same thing. And if you haven't experienced burnout, then again, come on, guys, work harder. And then the second thing, though, that I always like to think about it is that it's not so much that you need to be totally forgoing this 80% and focusing only on 20% of your game. No one's saying to do that. But the big thing to be worried about is that if you're always trying to work on 100% of your game at all times, then you're going to accidentally start working on the 80% that only 20% are going to play with. And so it's really just about making sure that you know what you're doing is impactful and not just getting done because it feels like it needs to get done. So now that we've identified all of our issues, we want to discuss our issues. And so, again, this tool is one that can be used individually or it can be used in a team. So depending on what's on your list, if you want to have some small discussions, I can give us some time for that. But also don't feel like you necessarily need to share this list with people if you don't want to. But when we discuss each item, there's three kind of broad categories, which are the topics of discussion that are most important for this process. And I'm going to go through and break down each one, but they are the complexity, the urgency, and the importance. Complexity is how much effort is going to go into this work. How hard is this task? How complex is it? Is this something that's going to take 30 minutes? Is this something that's going to take 2 hours? Is this something that's going to take 2 days? Is this something that's going to take 2 weeks? And so kind of as in, just about a minute or so, what I want you to do is kind of go down each item of this list, and on a scale of 1 to 10, actually, I'm going to take it back because we're going to do a simpler solution for this workshop just to try to start a little bit more basic. But what I want you to do is basically look through your list, and I want you to pick out 3 things that are your most complex tasks. And I want you to mark a C next to those 3 things in one of the columns on the side. Does anyone still need time? Cool. So, how do y'all feel about that so far? Easy to figure out what's complex and what's not complex? Cool. There's a reason I picked that one first. So, the second thing is urgency, which is how immediate is the work? Is this like this needs to be done today, or is this this needs to be done at the end of the semester? And so next, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to go down the list and we're going to pick out the 3 things that are most urgent. What is the most immediate work that needs to be done? And then put a U in the second column next to those 3 things.
Some of them can be the same things that we pick.
Yes, some of them can be the same things. But they don't have to be.
3 things?
3 things. Does anyone need more time? Awesome. All right, now this is the one that always gets debated the most. And so fortunately, we're not in an actual meeting setting right now, but next I want you to pick the 3 most important things on your list. And I want you to put an I next to the 3 most important things that you need to do. Now, I don't know about you guys, but most people struggle with this one because they want to say that everything is important. And it's important it's important to keep in mind that if everything is important, then nothing is important just by rule of relativity. Yes.
What do you call it? There's stuff that is like, should we put an I next to things that are important for us to have done, or important as in like this is like I'm struggling to understand the word importance.
Okay. What does important mean to you?
That means it's something that I feel like I need to have done.
Mhm.
What do you call it? And some things that I find that are what do you call it? That are urgent are not necessarily important.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly how to let's think of it.
Is your question related to his, or do you have a separate? Okay.
Actually, I think well, I don't I wouldn't say it's much of a, but I think like a good way to put it would be like, so there's like 4 categories. There's I would say one is like important and urgent, and then the second category, sorry, the second category is important and but not as urgent, and then there's
So you're actually getting to spoiler territory, so I'm gonna have to cut you off. But so to try to answer your question a little bit, because you're right, urgent and important are 2 separate things. And so kind of going off of this, urgent is kind of how immediate is it, and then important is how impactful is it? What's going to yield the most results? And so to kind of put things into perspective, if I need to, if someone tells me, okay, there's a bug with in-app purchases and no one can buy anything in your game right now. If I don't fix that, then I get 0 money that day. So I would say that fixing that's pretty important and urgent. But it's certainly it's going to have the biggest output, right? Because if my goal ultimately is to make more money, then I'm going to prioritize and say that the things that make money are important. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be urgent, right? Because someone can come in and say, hey, this daily reward is broken, and everyone who's going to try to get the daily reward is going to, maybe get like an extra semicolon in like a paragraph. But it needs to be fixed today because it's the daily reward versus, we have a big tournament next week and the catering just fell through. So one is urgent, right? That needs to be solved today, but it's not really that important. And then the other is important, but it's not really that urgent because it's not till next week. Does that help answer your question? Okay, what's up?
Okay, think about like you have a homework assignment due tonight. That's for 5% of your grade. Then you have a test due in 3 weeks for 50% of your grade. One of them is awesome immediately, but it's not worth that much weight. Another one's off in the future, so it's not immediate necessarily, but it has a full real impact.
So is the question about importance versus urgency or just about importance itself?
Yeah, I'm having a struggle in understanding what importance itself is.
Okay.
It's fine. I can put nice.
Well, I mean, so just out of curiosity, how many people are like confused by the word importance? Okay, so what is your question?
Well, the thing is, I basically put importance next to the biggest tasks.
Right.
Because those are the ones that are going to have the most impact.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking of doing as the most important ones.
Yeah, so you nailed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for here, I have like the same task that I have C, I have I.
That's
and
okay.
then I have one that has IUC.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Don't worry. What's up?
Another example for me, I put like get food, and money for rent. That's like important things to do.
Yeah.
And urgent as well, because eating every day. But like I think it's things that are like necessary for you to continue doing what you're doing is less important.
Yeah, definitely. I think the key thing where you're absolutely correct is it's only really the thing that's important is the thing that you value. Because kind of going back to the root of what productivity is, right, is your input divided by your output. And so, your input is the work that you accomplish, and your output is the work that you're trying to get from that work. And it's not really my place to say what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so this is where I just kind of have to stick to the more generic terms and hope that you guys can find the meaning in them. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But otherwise, I think we can hopefully everyone's got their 3 marked, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then we can move on. So just to kind of go off of, I think, what he was about to spoil is kind of, so some of the items on your list you may have marked as urgent and important. Some of the lists you might have marked urgent and not important, and some of them you might have marked as urgent and not important. And so this table right here is really just kind of like a very quick heuristic that kind of can help you kind of more tangibly evaluate really what the actionable thing for some of the items on this to-do list are. Because quite literally my favorite portion of the square is the bottom right quadrant 4, which is eliminate. And that's saying if you have something on that list that is not urgent and it's not important, then you can just go ahead and cross it off. Now, I know I was a little bit harsh by telling you guys you only get to pick 3 things, and so I'm sure the first thing you're telling yourself right now is, well, just because I didn't put a U next or an I next to it doesn't mean it's not important. But as you kind of develop this tool more and more, really what we want to do is kind of rank each of these things within those categories and score those things. And so what I would kind of say is, like, if it gets like an urgency or an importance score of like 4 or below, then it kind of can be considered not important or not urgent. And you don't need to cross it off entirely, but really you just need to recognize that this is not something you need to be worrying about right now. If you have things that are important and you have things that are urgent, then definitely don't let yourself kind of get swept up in some of the things that aren't as important and aren't as urgent. And on top of that as well, one of the things I feel like, I struggle with a lot, and I've met a lot of people who struggle with it as well, is there's a very big issue with getting urgency and importance confused in the first place. Because if I think someone had said the example, right, of like, you have an assignment due tonight worth 5% of your grade, and you have a big test due next week worth 20% of your grade. If you're students like me, you're probably just going to forget about that urgent assignment that night. While some people are like, it's like, oh, it's due tonight, and I have to get it done, and they stay up all night doing it, but then they kind of struggle with that big test later on because they didn't give it enough time. When you could just kind of say, am I allowed to swear in here?
Yeah.
You're allowed to just kind of say, yo, fuck that 5%, and make sure that you get that other test that weekend done really, really well. And this is, again, where that Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, comes into play, is kind of recognizing, saying, just because these things are urgent, just because they're due tonight, and like people are telling me that it has to happen right away, if it falls into that kind of like, 20% of my results where I'm not actually going to get a lot out of this, just cut it. What's up?
Can I take a picture of that?
Absolutely. It's not mine, so.
Did I steal?
Yes.
Can you actively also do like math among your grades to just be like,
Yes.
I don't need to do this like category.
Absolutely. I was 100% the kid who would calculate just how poorly I can do and still pass, and then not do beyond that.
I think everyone used that like website, like final grade calculators.
Oh, yeah.
Like how low do you need to get in your final, or how high?
See, I need to follow up with you because I didn't even know that was a thing, but I was doing it manually.
Sometimes it said I needed to get like a 250% to get like a 70 or something. At that point, just like don't show up.
You might need tutoring. Yeah. Was there another question? Oh, what's up?
It's more like based, like how bad are the repercussions?
So it depends on the work that you're doing. Because certainly, like, in like a school setting, I think that does come up a lot, right? Where like the thing that's important is the thing that's going to have the biggest repercussions, kind of like the bad things that will happen if you don't do it. but it can also be the opposite, right? Like the good things that are gonna come if you do it, right? So take vertical shift for an example. I don't get a grade for working on it. No one tells me I'm doing a good job. But if I know when I'm doing a good job, and that's because thank you. I know when I'm doing a good job, and that's because money's coming in, and so the actions that I take quite literally impact what revenue we make that month. And so that's kind of like the big thing is like, I mean, I guess you could say like there would definitely be negative things that happen if you don't make money that month, but it's really the focus is on how good things can get if I do make sure I'm prioritizing the right things. That's a great question. Any other questions? Awesome. Oh, sorry.
So like, let's say you have something on your list that's like you didn't put urgent or importance.
Right.
But there's going to be a lot of bad stuff that happens if you don't do it.
Well, if there's going to be a lot of bad stuff that happens if you don't do it, I would reevaluate if it's important. But in a sense, to try to keep this workshop easier and quicker, I just told you guys to basically list like the 3 top things. But really, when I do this personally or like with my company, we take the time to actually like kind of rank each thing. And so in a sense, everything gets a scale of importance, and you'll see kind of how that gets applied closer to the end of the workshop. But really, for the sake of this, it's kind of like if it didn't make those top 3, just pretend it's not important. What's up?
Okay, so let's say, for example, there's an activity that isn't exactly viewed by others as important, but it gives you satisfaction when you do it. Would that still be considered important because, like, it makes you, like, gives you a better, puts you in a better mood or something like
Yeah.
that?
So that kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier about what's important and what yields like the biggest output is 100% dependent on what you value in the first place. And so me, for example, I value money. And so I like to make sure that my output yields a lot of money. But if what you value is, having fun, or, making sure that you're doing something that's entertaining to you, then that should be the output. Sorry, Mike. That should be the output that you kind of, judge your importance by. And then kind of like, equivalently, if your output is your grade, that's the thing that you value is getting a good grade, then you would kind of use that as a heuristic to optimize towards your grade.
So wait, like, okay, let me, part 4, do you really mean like, eliminate it completely? Or if you actually have time to do it, you can do it?
So that's a great question. I like to say eliminate it because you know what happens to the tasks that you say you'll do later? You don't do them. And so it's easier to just kind of clear them from your brain altogether and say, I'm not going to do it. It's a lot easier to just accept that fact early on. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that you cannot ever do it. So I guess to kind of speak ahead a little bit, so at the end of the day, once you've kind of gone through this list and you've put a score in each 3 of these columns, and we'll see this all at the end, what you can do is you can load this kind of to-do list into something like Google Sheets, and you can then rank your to-do list based on the average of those 3 values. And so what happens is as you kind of adjust and assign those values, your to-do list organically starts to sift so that at the top of your list, you have basically your most urgent, your most important, and if I'm doing it, your least complex tasks at the very top of your list. And then at the bottom of your list are going to be your least urgent, your least important, and your most complex tasks at the bottom. And so ideally that way, kind of to like what you're speaking about, is the tasks that you're eliminating, they're not gone, but they're just hopefully so far down this list that you don't have to worry about them. And sure, if they bubble up to the top, then now is the right time to do it, but you really don't have to worry about them until that happens. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So basically, like, when you make new lists, you basically put everything that you didn't deem as like I, U, or C into that new list.
So actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, but admittedly, I didn't really. To answer the question, the way that I do this personally, and again, it depends on who I'm doing it with and what I'm doing it for. But so, like at Corrupted Media, we literally have just like this one rolling spreadsheet that we load all of our bugs into, and we have like a little ingestion field where we can kind of say, here's the new bugs that are coming in that need to be assigned new values. But otherwise, it just gets fed into this master list. And so at pretty much any point in time, we can just kind of pull off the top 10 things, and we know that these are the top 10 urgent, impactful, and achievable things without having to really like sift or think about it. And the tasks that that basically don't fall into that category, they just kind of get lost into the weeds of this of this Google sheet to basically bubble up when they become available or when the time's right. And you do get skeletons, like there's kind of a graveyard at the bottom of like those tasks that have been sitting there for like a year and never got done. But the reason they never got done is because they were never important in the first place. And what's more important is that you didn't waste time doing these tasks that clearly could have just sat at the bottom to be unnoticed. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? It was a really good slide, apparently.
I mean, I like the graphic. It's like
Yeah. No, I found this online, but I really like it too. And it's going to come back up later, so you don't have to miss it too much. But moving on. So now we have identified all of our issues, and we've taken the time to discuss a lot of our issues. And so now what we want to do is understand how we can take some of these to-do items and make sure that they're actionable, and make sure if they're able to be delegated that we delegate them, and understanding how to prioritize them to make sure that they get done in the right order. So, cool. First of all, a to-do list should be actionable. There's nothing worse than a to-do list that has something really vague or ambiguous, like make game. Because, you kind of get this sense of like, well, I can't do anything after this on the list until I've made game, but I also don't want to make game right now, and so the whole to-do list gets put on pause. And so what we want to do is make sure that everything on our to-do list is something that we can actually do. And or delegate. So kind of coming back here real quick, because we see these are two quadrants, is do, plan, or delegate based on how urgent and important they are. And so to talk about delegator real quick, because I'm sure some of you guys are probably thinking like, oh, I'm talking about delegation, and of course, like I run a team of developers, and so delegation is really easy for me to do, but the delegation is not necessarily something that you guys can do. And so I kind of want to make it clear that when I talk about delegation, and when you hear delegation as a term, it doesn't strictly require subordinates, because you can delegate to things that aren't people. Now, I imagine since it's a game dev club, there's at least some programmers in the room. And so here's the thing is, a lot of your work can be delegated to your computer. A great example of that being, you were just telling me that there was a much easier way for me to calculate and cheat on my classes. And this whole time I was doing it myself. And so that would be an excellent example of delegation, is just, I've got this computer program, it can solve a problem for me. And obviously, depending on what it is, you guys can even code solutions to simplify and delegate some of your problems. I was doing all of this to-do list stuff manually, and now I'm using Google Sheets to kind of automate a lot of it. I've written Python scripts and Java scripts that, will automate certain things that I need to get done. We have build servers that simplify how long it takes to make builds of our game, because that was a big time suck. There's a huge profession in game development for tools developers, which are literally the people who build the tools that help the other developers make the games easier so they can delegate some of their tasks. And so delegation is a really important skill to have, regardless of if you have subordinates or not. And I strongly encourage kind of like always considering with most things you do, is this something I have to do or can I delegate this? And so that's everything I just said. when I think of delegation, really the first thing I always think about is automation, and that's kind of like what I was just saying with writing code to basically try to simplify some of your workload. But there are other forms of delegation as well. Most notably is consolidation, which is kind of like saying, well, hey, I need to, make sure all of these stickers go into a bag, and I need to make sure all these chips go into a bag. And right now, that's two different people's tasks. But I can just kind of say, well, they're all right there. They're all kind of going in the same bag. So why don't you just put them both in one bag instead of making two people both try to fight over putting it in the bag? And so that's another great way to delegate, is just kind of see who's already doing it and just kind of stack it on their plate if they have room for it. And then similar is outsourcing. And so a great example of that is, the Vertical Shift is a multiplayer game, which means that in order to test it, you need to have people, which is not always the easiest thing when it's 3 a.m. and you're eating Doritos and you need to make sure that this bug is fixed. Also, if you just constantly ask your friends, I've learned, to help you test your game, you eventually start to lose friends. So we started outsourcing our QA testing with a local group called the Indie Cluster. And so what we thought was going to be a really ridiculous, expensive thing that we didn't want to do actually turned out to be a huge time saver. That's actually saving us money when you consider all of the money that we spend on our personal lives that we get to do instead of testing. And so that is delegation. And so if you have something that is urgent but not important, then you can most of the time just delegate it. And because it doesn't really matter if it gets done very well, it kind of just sounds like it just needs to get out of the way. So that's what delegation is great for. So really the most important part of Solve is making sure that everything that you can do is something that's actionable, kind of like I was saying earlier. So just out of curiosity, if you guys look over your list, is there anything on your list right now that you don't necessarily, you need to do it, but you don't really know how to do it, or what needs to actually go into making it happen? Okay, good couple of hands. So I'm talking to you guys mostly then, and everyone else, I don't believe. So here's the chart again. I told you it was going to come back. And so, quite literally, this is a very simple way to take almost any task and turn it into an actionable task, is to pick one of these 4 words and put it at the front of it. I think in therapy they call that diffusion, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. And so kind of the example that I have right here, right, is if your to-do list says build RPG combat system. Well, that's not very actionable. Unless you've built so many RPG combat systems in your past that you can do this in your sleep, something tells me that that's going to need to be broken down into more tasks, most likely, and that if you come across this item on your to-do list, then this is going to be that road stop, that blocker that really kind of prevents you from being able to move onto the rest of your list. And so in order to solve this problem, first, we've already determined, is this urgent or important or not? And so you can kind of figure out where it lands on this table, and then just quite literally put that word in front of it. And so in this case, building your RPG system is arguably important, especially if you're making an RPG. And if you're not making an RPG, what are you doing? But it's not necessarily urgent. Yes, you definitely need to have your RPG system before you can launch, but it's not like you can't go ahead and start making some treasure chests and your little green hat before the RPG system is ready. You can probably do some other stuff that are a little bit more urgent, like putting together a trailer or if you're trying to make money, a business plan. And so in this case, we have immediately turned build RPG combat system into something that's actionable by very simply saying plan to build an RPG combat system, because now we can actually do that. We can start planning something. We know how to plan things. You just Google it. But conversely, if it is something that is just, it's important and it's urgent, then sometimes you do just kind of have to say, do it. But also you can kind of put in front of it is delegate it, and so now you have your task is to just find someone else or something else that can do this for you, which is a lot easier to do than doing it yourself sometimes. As well as eliminate it, which, some things you can't always just eliminate outright and just kind of forget about it. Sometimes you do need to actually actively eliminate something, like making sure that it can be removed without causing any larger issues. Or if the thing you're eliminating is a person, then, dealing with that whole aspect of people. Cool. And so at that point, we're going to go ahead and review our to-do list again. So what I want us to do is I want us to kind of look over the to-do list and go ahead and if there's anything on your to-do list that is urgent and important, go ahead and circle it for me. And if there's anything that's on your to-do list that is important and complex, I want you to put a star next to it.
Urgent and complex or important and complex?
Can someone tell me what I just said?
Important and complex.
Thank you. Okay, important and complex.
That's like the 3 ones.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll admit I'm kind of winging it at this point, so I wasn't sure what I'd said. And then if there's anything on your list that is urgent and complex, put like an exclamation mark next to it. And then I think those are the 3. Yeah. So, and then anything else that doesn't have any kind of symbol on it or around it, just go ahead and cross it out. So how many to-do items are left? 5?
I had 11.
You had 11 originally, now you're down to 5?
Just like less than half.
Yeah, less than half of your list. What about anyone else?
3.
3 or 4? So how many of yours are like urgent and important or something like that, where it's like 2 or more?
Urgent and important.
Or any of them that are 2 or more?
All of them.
Oh, you shouldn't have crossed out anything that is just urgent or anything like that. It's like quite literally the things that don't have anything next to them.
Yeah. 3.
Okay, so all 3 are urgent, important, and complex?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind sharing any of them?
Yes.
Okay. You do mind?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Is there anyone who does have something that is complex, urgent, and important that doesn't mind sharing it?
So my car's wheel is about to fall off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I just don't know how I'd go about doing it because if I take it to a mechanic, it's going to be like $500.
Yeah.
And I've been like researching YouTube videos on how to do it, but it all seems like something that I don't know if I can do it without like destroying my car.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that one. I mean, I don't know what else is on your list, but I would say it's definitely a good thing you just crossed half of it off, right? Because you need to really focus on making sure your car is working. Yeah. Go ahead. The mega what? Oh, cool. Is that part of the club? Awesome. Okay. And so that is urgent, important, and complex. So what makes it urgent? Yeah, no, I definitely know that feeling. I can sympathize with working on a game for a couple of years. Does anyone else have any? Go ahead.
Say you tonight. I feel like that's all 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a complex essay? Okay, cool. How much of your grade is it for?
30%.
Oh, I'd say that's pretty important. Yeah. So, how many things did you just cross off your list?
6, 8.
Well, I'm happy to say your evening is cleared.
A little bit.
So on the inverse, what are some of the things that you guys crossed out?
Feeding my cat.
That is very important, sir.
Do it. It's not very urgent.
Yeah. You could do it tomorrow. He wouldn't like it, but you know, is that important?
Good number of kids.
No, that's definitely an example. Go ahead.
Find a job. I'm a college student, so I don't need to work yet.
So, I mean, in all fairness, like, I'm not the person to answer that, but like, you know, that kind of comes down to what you value. Because some people, like, you know, it's live or die if they don't get a job, but it really can be a stressor that doesn't yield as much results as
I
you'd
do
think. And
want
so,
a job. It's just right now.
Right.
Looking for a job on top of some other things that I
yeah,
have to do. It's not super great.
Yeah.
Really long.
don't get me wrong. Yeah, I mean, because the reason it's on your list in the first place is because it's something that you find at least somewhat important. But kind of to your point, like, you know, if there are just inherently more important things, more urgent things, then, you know, you probably do want to make sure that those are taken care of. Yes.
I personally crossed off studying for an exam Tuesday and talking to people.
What's something that you didn't cross out, if you want to share?
Working on a system for a game that's like I have 2 games that like I have to finish something for one Saturday, one Sunday.
Yeah.
So those 2 things are still on there. And so is getting a job, but you know, so it's more like a planning about.
Right. Plan to get a job. Okay, cool. So, I guess overall, how do you guys feel about your to-do list? Kind of going through this exercise. Is there anyone who feels like that this has helped, or is there anyone who has like explicit reasons that this has not helped, or anything like that? It's really just kind of an open-ended question. Go ahead.
I feel like it's extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I think it is. I just need to be better at you. Yeah,
that's definitely the big
it is helpful.
one.
I think it's helpful. It just doesn't help me particularly.
Well, so why doesn't it help you?
But because the things I do are sort of set in stone, I have to be ready for them to change on the fly, and I hate my job.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm gonna be a little bit honest here. Like, it wasn't too helpful for me, but because I already had like a planning system, you know,
Mhm.
spend 1 hour a day, a sort of different planning system. Spend 1 hour a day doing some sort of activity.
Right.
But I did learn some stuff from this.
Awesome. Yeah. Go ahead.
So how often do you make these lists?
I probably do this more or less multiple times a day. But it's all different scales, right? Because so I try to time box just about everything because that's outside of the scope of this presentation, but just like if you need to do a lot of things, then you quite literally just need to make sure that you spend less time doing some things. And so it's always important to like be cognizant of how much time you have. And so I try to do dailies, weeklies, monthlies, and quarterlies. And so pretty much every day I have like my daily to-do list. Every week I have my weekly to-do list. Every month I have my monthly to-do list. And every quarter I have my quarterly to-do list. And then beyond that is really just high-level annual goals. And so kind of throughout any time of the day, one of those is being updated or referenced. But kind of like you were saying, like really what's more important to me isn't so much that you use this planning system, but kind of like you were saying that you have a planning system that works for you. And part of the reasons I like this is because to me it's relatively quick and agile. I've gotten it down to the point where I can, if I'm doing this for myself personally, like the daily, then quite literally I put 60 seconds on the clock, I write everything out, I put 60 seconds on the clock, I score everything, and then I'm done. And so it's like, really, I just like how quick and agile it is, because kind of like you were talking about having a very concrete day, that this can be kind of easily updated, right? Especially when you have it in Google Sheets. You don't have to redo the whole list every time. You just have to update the values that have changed, and the whole list is going to update and sort itself and figure the rest out. But even still, like, if you just don't have control over your schedule in the first place, then this is like a really good kind of way to say, like, here's the things that I do have control over, and how can I make sure that that little time that work doesn't take is being put to the things that I want to be putting it towards. So let me see if I have anything else in here. Okay, so kind of like I was saying, so you want to sort your list to make sure that your most urgent, your most important, and your least complex tasks are at the top. For me personally, I know some people, a lot of people, like to say to always start with your most complex thing. I like to do the easy work. And so I really kind of like flipping the complex and kind of sorting that for the least complex to come up at the top. And if you average those three scores, then you get like this rank score, and then you can rank everything by that, and you get your list in perfect order. And I can do a demonstration of that if you guys are interested in Google Sheets. So once you have your list in order, then you really just kind of go in order. And so you know for a fact that all of your important and actionable things are at the top, and that the least important things are at the bottom. And so you just kind of go down the list in order. You do however many of the things that you can, and you don't do the things that don't get done, and you just kind of accept that that's okay, because you've already done this work to make sure that you've solved for any of the hidden concerns, like the thing that's like, oh, I know I'm forgetting something. What's up?
Also, this probably is obvious, but I thought about this a little bit. If there's something that you want to do, but it's not really like important or urgent, or like there are other things that are more important, it's okay to like have it. Like, it's okay to like leave it off a list or have it on the back burner, because it'll probably come back to your brain at some point, and then at some point you'll just be like, oh hey, I don't have any tests this week. Thank God. Or I don't have. I've done a bunch of my homework already, and I have more time to do this other thing that isn't necessarily as important grades wise or money wise or anything like that. But it's just something I want to do. It's like it's a skill. It's like not a necessary skill, but it's a skill I want to learn. Like, I don't know. Like, let's say you want to pick up an instrument or learn a second language.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh dang, I'm doing a bunch of other things. If you still want to do that, then you can just like have it on the back burner. Or also like you can put like just like 20-30 minutes a day to something, and you'll still improve. But it's better to do that than to like I wanna learn, I don't know, I wanna learn Spanish, and then you like practice Spanish for like every Sunday for like 5 hours, but if you practice Spanish for like 20 minutes a day, then you're probably gonna faster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, kind of like just a similar example of that. What's ironic is like almost my entire life I've hated reading books. I've always felt like it was like super time consuming and you don't get a lot out of it. And I didn't really start reading books until kind of like early or late last year, early this year, depending on really when you think about it. But like, what's funny to me is, I never wanted to read books, so I felt like it was super time consuming. And then, I basically try to read like maybe 10 minutes. I'll say once a day, but it's really more like every 2 or 3 days. And, at this rate, I think I've like finished like 7 or 8 books this year. Which is like, to me, a mind-blowing amount of books, when I used to think that like I could read a book for a whole year and it wouldn't make it any better. Like, because you sit down, like when you try to read it for like an hour, it's like you're never getting anywhere.
I had that same experience when I had to cram for summer reading because I put off like my book of choice is a Stephen King book. And it's like, okay, I have to finish this over the weekend, and then it's like I have to read like 200 pages a day or
Mhm.
something like that, and it's just like, okay, I have to get to page 100. It's like, oh my god, it's been like half an hour, and I'm at page 20.
Yeah.
Oh god, and that's miserable.
Yeah, and that's like, time boxing something and like only working on it for like a couple minutes, but then make it just from that alone, it's going to become easier and easier to do it again. There's, in talking about habits in that kind of regard, there's tons of great books about that, as well as like YouTube videos and anything like that if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But also kind of going off of something else you were talking about, right, is because I think it came up for everyone a little bit, right? Is there something that's on my to-do list and it's not like important, but I really want to do it, right? And so, and this definitely goes outside of the scope of what I was really planning on talking about today, but this is something that I do is what I call from the book that came out of basically hotspots. And so I was saying earlier that, you rank something important based on whatever value is your heuristic. And so, like, if you value money, then important is based on how much money it's going to make. If you value grades, important is based on how what grade, how much of this impacts your grades. If your value is having fun, then your importance is how fun this is for you. And so this is where hotspots come into play, which is basically starting to manage different sets of lists based on different values. And so, I have my work hotspot, which is where a lot of my work to-dos go. And so when I sit down and say, okay, I'm going to work this hour, then I can just grab the thing at the top of that list and I'm ready to go. I don't even have to think about it. But if I sit down and say, okay, I want to do something fun this hour, then I can just pull something from my fun hotspot list. I don't call it that. And I'm ready to go and I don't have to stop and think about it. Or I can pull something from my fitness hotspot where I value, clearly not lately, being healthy. And so I have like, the things that are at the top of that to-do list ready to go, or, my home care hotspot, I have things like feed my cat at the top of that list so it doesn't get bogged down by all my other work things.
Bro, you can wait. Or just like get like a giant like can, like a giant tin can, fill it with cat food, and just open it up and whenever it's hungry, it'll just always get it.
I feel like cats are kind of good at
Delegate
Cats are better at that than dogs. Well, and also you can delegate it, right? Because they have those automated feeders. It's urgent, but it's not important. Cool. And then, so in conclusion, so if you participated, share your results. We did that a little bit, but I'd also love to hear more if you guys want to talk about it. But just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, really the most important thing I hope you take away from this is to make sure that you're focusing on getting the right work done and not focus on getting more work done, because that's a really good way to just spin a lot of wheels, accomplish very little results. And so, this is like the classic conundrum, right? It's like if I have an hour to work, do I spend that hour doing 5 things with 0 planning, or do I spend that hour doing 3 things with a little bit of planning? And everyone's like, well, obviously the 5 things are better. But no, the 3 things are better. Less is more. And then understand the difference between important and urgent. Just because someone's slamming an assignment down in front of you saying this needs to be done tonight or else your grade is going to suffer. Make sure you ask, well, how much is my grade going to suffer? Because if it doesn't sound very important, then don't let the urgency get to you. And then third and finally, make sure that you keep your to-do list actionable. Even if you do need to get something done, but it seems a little too complicated for the to-do list, just make sure you diffuse it a little bit, put some extra words in front of it that help turn it into something that's high level and ambiguous into something that's more tangible and specific and actionable. And then, bake this process or a process like it into your routine. If you try to start doing this, for your game, for your school, for your life, for anything, it's super, super easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, and it can save you a lot of time and stress in the long run. And then these are the 3 books that a lot of those things came out of. So if you're interested in learning more, then this is where you can find more. Thank you guys. I appreciate your time. I don't know what happens next. Someone tell me.
You fly through the ceiling, and someone takes you.
Hell, I'm like Batman?
No,
Oh.
you get abducted.
Oh.
You get abducted,
So
but then you're
it's kind of like Vecna about to get crunched.
No, you don't get crunched. You get abducted and then become me.
Get lost, I can send you
Well, I don't
the
know about
flyer
all
again.
that. What?
No, it's a great customer.
If you get lost, I can send you the flyer again.
Okay, guys, can we give one more thank you round of applause for Sean? Converse.
I'm super down to converse. So you told me that there's games being made.
Yeah.
I want to hear all about it.
Okay, so what's next is if you want to leave, feel free. If you want to stay, Sean kind of lives, from what I can tell, lives, eats, breathes, sleeps games. So if y'all want to talk to him about stuff that you have going on, if you want to show him stuff, he might have ideas, he might want to play stuff. Team leads, if y'all want to talk to him about like what you guys are doing, yeah, he's here.
Please come talk to me.
Yeah,
I want
converse,
to
communicate, and I'll go back to the speed run.
Yay! We're on minute 40.
Is anybody paying attention?
It's okay if you want to keep going. Very cute.
I'm so worried that I was like,
Well, then why would I look?
like, I will be the guy. You hate my family. In fact, I don't hate you.
Okay. Let's talk about the in the club.
Mars?
Yeah, he's the guy that are doing snowboarding. Because I played excessively with that's career. Yeah. So I want to do something like that.
So how does it work? Like, trying to pitch the whole picture.
Basically just like
Oh, yeah.
it's like more arcade. I have regular played cheap.
On the permit.
The same scale of everything. Imagery, like a fairly simple. I got this. That's a second.
Sorry, I was late. We were doing mock LARP battle in the studio downstairs. I brought all my weapons.
You just wanted to say.
Oh, I did entirely. I brought all my weapons, and I was like, "All right, who wants to do a 3-hit?" We just start fucking going. I swear to God, if James saw us, though, he would have like probably fired all of us on the spot. No, he's not. That's why we did it.
Holy shit!
How he said that he knows.
No, I met him 2 times at the Belgian trade mission because he was there for that, and then I met him at the fucking convention.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel like, if I
We
that to you every
I haven't I don't know, grown that relationship. He's a cool dude. I know him well enough.
Him. Well,
It's funny the way you phrase that.
Was it?
Romantic relationship.
Are you doing
Man,
Yep. We're mostly
people find it weird, man. I'm like, I treat all friendships and stuff as like they're all relationships in some regard, you know, and so they all are like, I don't know, like they all deserve attention and time, but like make it better.
part.
What?
Next week, oh, actually, I have to break for next meeting. A traveler. It's a work meeting.
Are you Spencer? Are you leaving? Leaving? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Are you trying to do? So wait, what's the engine?
I'm bringing the traveler right now. Very good. Like brown.
So I actually already have
The light glove.
I might. He said he's making my own, and it's all right.
Oh, I was at High Res the other day.
What?
I was at High Res too.
At
High Res.
You mean at their office?
Yeah.
Why?
For plate testing.
Oh.
This is the office is pretty.
So this one
Very different.
Is there anything else? You could put on there.
Yeah, but like
Cool.
there's the so down in real life, I can bring
Let's do talk about the club.
like
New. Which one were to get back today?
that looks really good.
So you could go to back. Have their back right. Have their back. That's the first thing.
Can I give it to you?
And by the time it's done, I do it like that for a couple reasons. Like it allows me to. It's not just physics. Because I want it to be consistent, and I also wanted it to be able to be ironclad for way out of here. So you know, like I took out the X amount of big spin. It gives yeah. So yeah, not exactly, but it's like a weird hodgepodge of like the whole day job, the other things of that. All things stuff.
It's definitely because like at this point now, when you're someone like a driving train, driving like you have a second like you know, they opted in. You need to look at first because they all but they actually relatively early on. So because they just have a little control.
That was my biggest that so it was like the first one was out. The second one was we are holding up the Google Drive. She has default on the galaxy. Which is very important for this type of thing. We can go upstairs. So now I still have the code. Now it's the mega. Do you have a I need to use it. Then you get what is I'm not trying to. I lightly feel very I teach little kids how to spend hours. It's a little short. What? Oh, I prefer. This is actually like because you know I was just about like the worst people. I didn't even mean to pull apart like I was at yeah, because I was at a restaurant and it's like having my arm around making sure because you know like in your case yeah, I guess this is like you know it's like let's say base Empire abilities. Let me sit on this side and then maybe I start what kind of character? And I kind of like that type of character. So you know, like now I'm just eating on like 3 or 4. Honestly, that's how it is. I did my first like James are gonna and like and there was like that's all I can say. We got that was the thing. It was like orange chicken. It is not required. Right. A couple weeks.
I used to be here long before here.
I was
Are you talking about fall?
What?
Are you talking about? They were trying to make a Metroidvania.
Also, Zappa wasn't
No, it's ambitious.
It wasn't vicious.
Well, the thing is,
it
Zappa
didn't
was
get
his
very
first
far.
movie.
I learned from that.
So what like fights? Well, they just like it's just a guy.
We have something which is better than what
Okay, so it's like hydraulic. It's like jump ale. Yeah, but we can't play it.
I mean,
It is like hydraulic. It's like half a basketball team, obviously.
We're
I really, I want to learn the default name.
Vanessa was so
I've never played one.
What's wrong with that? Shirley was wasn't a bad but she was phenomenally good. She was so yeah, Vanessa was oh, imagine the whole team we had in the team match. It's probably had been like a full
Yeah,
game.
it was.
Yeah,
It's where
no, I think it was
Oh, I think I saw a Twitch stream.
Okay, on the
Bye, Twitch. Mwah.